Oh, today I am back here to do another review for a friend of mine. As I know, Zach and I, including Aisha, were watching a typical 90s animated movie about the story about those military ants working together to save their colony, what they're trying to make social inroads. As I know it's going to be very interesting of what we saw on TV. So let's review Ants. So, when Ants got released in 1998, it was Drew's first ever debut film that also used CGI water for the first time ever. Even though it began in 1988, at the end of the Great Depression of Disney, courtesy of Walt Disney's death in 1966, Walt Disney Feature Animation pitched a film called Army Ants about pacifist worker ant who was teaching lessons of independent thinking to his militaristic colony. However, by 1994, when Jeffrey Katzenberg had left the company in a feud with against the trust of his former best friend, CEO Michael Eisner, against the vacant president position, right after Frank Rose was killed in a helicopter crash, Katzenberg teamed up with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen as they planned to create the next animation division to rival Pixar. As the film began production in May 1996, it also commenced on The Prince of Egypt, as it contrasted Pacific data images to work on this concept. Since Harry Gregson Williams and John Powell composed the music for the film, it was quite interesting that it gave John Lasseter a run for his money, specifically because of Steve Jobs' charging towards A Bug's Life. Since A Bug's Life was all about using an invention to harvest some food, Ants basically takes an anti-political approach to it. As we all know, it had an all-star cast like Woody Allen, Sharon Stone, Jennifer Lopez Affleck, Sylvester Stallone, Christopher Walken, Dan Aykroyd, Anne Bancroft, Danny Glover, and Gene Hackman, that we all know him, that he was from Superman. In case that Sylvester Stallone, on the other hand, was best known for being involved in portraying Rocky Balboa from the Rocky boxing film series. This is how the story is like this. Z the Ant falls in love with Princess Banner within a treacherous scheming of the evil General Mandible, who threatens to wipe out the entire worker population. But Z must save the ant colony while he's striving to make social inroads. However, for some reason, during development of this movie, Ben Affleck was considered for the role of Z, and also, Word of God mentions that, Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for General Mandible, and most notably, for Robin Williams, he was attached to portraying Corporal Weaver. Eventually, they had to decide on choosing Woody, Gene, and Sylvester as the right actors because they said that, for what Ben Affleck was saying, that he just stepped down the offer of this movie. Specifically, it's because of his commitment to the 2003 Daredevil movie that would come out 5 years later. So, throughout the feud between DreamWorks and Pixar, throughout its development, it was supposed to be like an adult-oriented movie. Well, even before Animations did Chicken Run, the concept was also originally called Bugs Light Out during development of this movie as a working title. So, despite this, the plot is very, very simple. Ever since it debuted 25 years ago, from what we saw in the autumn 1998. what it all started around that time in New York City. It all started when Z the Ant is an activist ant who wants to put an end to the dangers of both capitalism and economics. However, Z realizes when he first met Princess Bala and Barbados, aka Barbe for short, Z and Bala have to work together to prove that Barbe and Z have switched places to prove that Z can join the army, courtesy of Mandible's charging. Although Mandible isn't like Hopper from A Bug's Life, even though Hopper is a blind grasshopper whose right eye got bitten by a blue jay within its radioactive beak, the problem is that there is no problem for Mando because he's not that blinded, and he's a lot more smarter than Hopper and cares most of his family because he wants to take control of the family business. For some reason, he says that all of his soldiers may die, but it's a heroic sacrifice that he's willing to make to save his family from the termites. However, everyone except for Z dies in what the termites have been killed as well. Even though Z is declared a hero for surviving it, they notice that the entire quest takes an unexpected turn for the worst when Z accidentally slaps Bala. They get stranded in the desert within the grass. However, they met a wasp who would tell them that they have to find a way to put a stop to all that inventory that's causing the colony to die out. And what they noticed that the ants are harvesting all that food so miserably is that they need to find a safe haven to make sure these ants can stop harvesting so much food for themselves. However, it gets really complicated when it all happens when Cutter kidnaps Bala and Z in order to get revenge on them. Barbe, however, gets kidnapped by Mandible in what he's trying to stage a goddamn genocide to kill the working ants with a tsunami. Oh my fucking god, Mandible. You are not Nutty Gunray from Star Wars! I know you're going to jail for doing this! Because all I'm getting is that Nutty Gunray wanted to upset Oda and Naboo so he could trick Darth Sidious into doing this to pretty much try and find a way out of what we probably saw in Phantom Menace. Like, we noticed that the Trade Federation were just creating turmoil on the Galactic Republic by blockading the guns in order to make sure that Jar Jar Binks will be a wanted criminal in order to take control of Naboo in a protest against the risk of the dangers of taxing legislations. However, much to the legislations of what we saw in Antz, this is what gets really worse for them. However, as the tsunami begins to rise itself up on impact towards the colony, Z realizes that he has to rescue all of the worker ants, and when he rescues all of the worker ants, they realize that Cutter wants to turn against Mandible for trying to kill the worker ants for no good reason. Even though Z pushes Mandible towards his death on a tree, and then as the water begins to rise itself up within the water supply, Cutter rescues Z, and everyone lives happily ever after except for Mandible. That was a family-friendly death. Better than Hopper's awful death in A Bug's Life. This movie probably succeeds in what the other movie, the knockoff itself, A Bug's Life, pretty much fails on everything. And what this movie is quite awfully fun to watch. And it's a bit more preachy. So, despite its debut on September 19th, 1988 at the Toronto International Film Festival, it had a budget of $42 to $105 million on a box office success of $171.8 million. Even though I praised the CGI animation and the way of special effects of what I saw in this movie, it finally received positive reviews in what they praised the voice cast, animation, humor, and appeal towards adults for saying this was a better movie than Sausage Party. As I like to say this, I'd probably give this movie just a smashingly decent 8.8 out of 10. Because this movie is my all-time favourite 1998 movie that I've ever imagined. Even though the poster itself looks a bit too harsh within its bad qualities, it looks a bit harsher in hindsight. That, from my opinion, what you saw the poster looks very familiar. If you were discovering why it would have come out in 1999, I noticed it was supposed to come out in the month of March 1999, but got shuffled to October 7th. Actually, Antz was going to come out on March 31st, 1999, but it was delayed to October 2nd, 1998, to avoid competition with a movie that I really don't like to talk about. As I know, it's a shout out to The Matrix, and I'm definitely not a huge Matrix fan because that came out in March 1999, only on March 24th. Only a budget of $63 goddamn million for the Wachowskis. I don't get it with a computer programmer. I don't get this movie, so I would never buy this movie at all costs. Now, where was I? For some reason, the funniest reason why every ant has his day is that you get to see Z standing on top of the mud itself of the colony in what you saw, the New York City skyline, and this Easter egg, you get to see the Marriott World Trade Center Twin Towers over there. For some reason, it feels like a harsher in hindsight moment to what you also saw in Godzilla 1998. Although it was a shitfest in my opinion that everyone realized it's so awful, I realized there was something funny about the scene, what you could imagine. So, if you look at WTC, this feels like a harsher in hindsight moment of what you could imagine on TV. So, what you can imagine that this poster also foreshadows 9/11 by a landslide that, well, according to the funny background event trope, the funny background event trope, for some reason, after 9/11, everyone in New York City was on a state of depression within the moment that they got despaired by the tragedy caused by some airplanes slamming the buildings with the process in flames that only killed over probably around more than 20 people at all. Even though it's quite ridiculous about the impact of the tragedy, meaning that most of the movies were pretty much delayed to like 2002. You could count mainly Lilo and Stitch and Spider-Man, and also Scooby-Doo and Ice Age. They all had a sense of heroism of what you could imagine. This is what the Titanic was this to New York City. But without that out of the way, I appreciate the awesomely good soundtrack. I know I like the soundtrack, which is quite decent. Yeah, but I ran out of ideas to do this so. So, bye-bye.